This is VOA Africa.
Good evening, I'm Esther Githui Ewart. It's Thursday, July 11th. This is Africa 54. Former child soldiers react to the conviction of former Congolese military leader Bosco Ntaganda for atrocities including murder, rape, and conscripting child soldiers. A new book, Beneath the Tamarind Tree, highlights the plight of the abducted Chibok girls. We'll talk to the author, Aisha Sisay. And Uber seeks to expand to Senegal's capital, Dakar, but faces significant challenges. Former fighters are reacting to the war crimes conviction of Bosco Ntaganda. The International Criminal Court this week found the former Congolese rebel leader guilty on 18 counts of murder, rape, sexual slavery, and using child soldiers. Some of those young people are now being rehabilitated at the Jericho Foundation Center in Goma. Oster Malivika visited the center where he met with former child soldier Katambwe Shabani and asked him about the verdict.
In my opinion, the charges against Bosco Ntaganda were serious, but most of the time he was being ordered by those who were in top positions at the time in the country. He was being ordered to do things like killing people. That's why he is in jail today. I'm very happy. The situation was very worse. We did so many bad things. You cannot imagine that such brutal things can be done to human beings. The conviction is giving me some relief.
Congolese women's rights activist Florence Bunyere decries the use of young girls as sex slaves in Ntaganda's rebel group.
Ntaganda deserves maximum punishment for enslaving women and girls, including rape. He forced them to be informants. He deserves stiff punishment, which will serve as a lesson to others.
Councillors say former child soldier Tuso Kampara still shows the effects of fighting for Ntaganda's rebel group.
I have done many bad things, very bad things. I ended up contracting diseases. Later, I got the opportunity to join the Jericho Foundation. They helped me a lot. I got the opportunity to go for vocational training. Honestly, what I did when I was in the bush were horrible things. I used to abduct women and girls and sometimes kill them. It was a battleground. I really felt bad with what I did in the bush. I had to repent my sins. The ruling against Ntaganda is good. The ruling should act as a wake-up call for those still involved in armed violence. Rebel group commanders should borrow a leaf from what happened to Ntaganda, who did so many heinous acts during his time. Others who are still involved in the violence should stop.
Jericho Foundation Director Pascal Bakenga Safari says he hopes the ICC conviction of Bosco Ntaganda will deter others from using children in war.
The ruling is welcome because things were very bad. Ntaganda was also charged for recruiting child soldiers, and that is unacceptable. Children are not required to be in the army, but in the society. The ruling is a lesson to others who are still in armed groups in DRC. The task ahead is for government to work with international organizations to eliminate recruitment of child soldiers in armed groups. The government needs to have a better plan and strategy on how to eliminate this trend.
That is Pascal Bakenga Safari, the leader of a group rehabilitating former child soldiers who fought for the now convicted Congolese war criminal Bosco Ntaganda. Our thanks to VOA Swahili correspondent Oster Malivika for that report from Goma. Now, police in Nigeria fired guns and tear gas during a clash with a protesting Shiite Muslim group in Abuja on Thursday. Witnesses say the police fired their weapons in an effort to disperse hundreds who gathered outside government buildings to demand the release of their leader. The confrontation comes 2 days after clashes with police left at least 2 people dead and 40 protesters in police custody. Demonstrators ran and threw stones as police arrested at least a dozen protesters. The Islamic Movement of Nigeria, a group that represents Nigeria's minority Shiite Muslims, says they will continue protesting until they secure the release of their leader, Ibrahim Zakzaki, who has been in detention since 2015. Now, in April 2014, the world woke up to unusually sad news about the kidnapping of 276 girls from a government school in the Nigerian town of Chibok. The Boko Haram extremist group claimed responsibility, but as days turned into months and years, the spirited fight to bring the girls back home began to fade. But one woman, Aisha Sise, is vowing to keep the memories of the girls alive. Aisha has authored a new book, Beneath the Tamarind Tree, to highlight the plight of the Chibok girls. She joins me live from New York. Aisha, welcome to VOA and Africa 54.
Thank you so much, Esther.
Aisha, what drove you to author this book?
You know, as someone who worked at the time at CNN when the story broke and covered it in those days and weeks, it struck me deeply on a personal level as somebody who is African, as someone who's a child of a woman who grew up in a place not that dissimilar to Chibok in neighboring Sierra Leone. The story had deep personal resonance for me, and I was struck by how the story was everywhere for the briefest of moments, and then it just seemed to disappear off everyone's radar. But I stayed on the story, maintained connections with the community, with activists, and when the girls were released, the first group in 2016, the first group of 21, I flew to Nigeria to cover their release for CNN. And Esther, it was just a story that I just couldn't drop, I couldn't let go of. I felt that no one had really gone beyond the headlines, and these girls had remained nameless and faceless for too long. And I wanted to correct that with this book.
Now, Aisha, you spoke to some of these girls after they were released. What did they tell you about their captivity? What touched you most?
I think what really was hard to get my head around was that their captors weren't just focused on obviously taking them hostage and separating them from their families physically, but they were also hell-bent, if you will, on making sure that they converted to Islam, forcing them, pressing them to marry their captors, and just generally the psychological torment was constant. The beatings, the starvations, the fear of being killed by Nigerian military bombardments, because the Nigerian military, you know, has conducted a lot of this military campaign against Boko Haram by air. The constant fear, Esther, that they lived in, that really struck me, that these girls were just terrified for their lives for months on end. And then the other part that I want to stress to your viewers is the desperation felt by the families who lost their children, families who felt utterly and totally alone and abandoned by their government and much of the world.
And you mentioned the government, and a lot of critics say they haven't done a lot. But what do parents of these girls want the world to know?
You know, 276 girls were swept up that night. 57 escaped in the hours afterwards, and then 219 disappeared into the forest. Everyone should know that 112 girls are still unaccounted for, right? So 112 families are still grieving, Esther. 112 families are begging the world to use its voice, its collective voice, to pressure the Nigerian government to show what they are doing to find these girls, to account for them, to bring them home. You know, these girls matter, and that's the other reason I wrote this book. African children matter. African girls matter. The notion that because this happened in Africa and that these victims are poor and mostly come from uneducated families doesn't make their worth any less than children in the West or any other part of the world. And I want to, you know, I stand with the families to say, yes, your children matter, and yes, everything possible should be done to bring them home.
I understand you have decided this is going to be your fight, as well as you have founded something about We Lead to do about, with how women can lead in a fight just like this. Can you tell us a little more about what you intend to do to keep this story alive and make sure that these girls come back home to their parents?
Yeah, We Can Lead, Women Everywhere Can Lead is my non-profit organization that's actually operating out of Sierra Leone, which is where I'm from, where my parents are from. And with that effort, you know, I have close to 600 girls that we are nurturing to become the next generation of female leaders in Africa. And the goal is to take this organization right across Africa to help nurture and fulfill the potential that girls have. In the case of the Chibok girls, the majority of whom are in a school in northeastern Nigeria, I'm just doing everything I can to support them, giving a portion of the proceeds of this book to them, to help them recover from the trauma, to help them recover from the visible and invisible wounds that they have after being held captive for so long, and just generally using my platform and using every stage that I stand on to keep the story alive. We know pressure campaigns work. We have seen it in the past. So people shouldn't say that if, you know, their voice will have no impact here. All of our voices can have impact, Esther.
If you had something to say right now to the president of Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari, about these girls, what would that be?
Listen, the president of Nigeria deserves the credit for bringing 103 girls back. Nobody can take that away from his administration. But it is unconscionable that the parents are left in a limbo, in a darkness where they feel completely unsupported and unspoken to. So my plea to President Buhari is speak to these families, engage these families, share what you are doing. I understand it is difficult. Boko Haram has splintered. This is a hard road, but you are president and the power lies with you and with the assets of the state to walk this road and do what you can to account for the girls and bring those you can back. And that is my plea, to make this a priority, to show the world that African leaders care about African children and that they care about girls.
Aisha, well said. Thank you so much. Aisha Sise, right? Aisha Sise is a journalist and author of the new book, Beneath the Tamarind Tree. Now, the world already is dealing with climate refugees. These are people whose homes have been inundated by rising sea levels. But in Wales, residents of one seaside town are confused and angry because of a political decision to let nature have its way and let the town sink back into the sea. Here's VOA's Kevin Enox.
The Welsh seaside town of Fairborn is a beautiful but low-lying town on the end of an estuary in Wales. And slowly but surely, the water is rising. The slow advance of the ocean has led Welsh political leaders to recommend the town be decommissioned beginning in 2045 and for the town to disappear by 2055. Local residents, not surprisingly, aren't pleased with the idea.
And through what's been going on now with Gwynedd Council, saying that they're going to destroy our village in 2045 or 2055, well, why? Come and show us your figures that you're using to say the sea level is going to rise that quick in that amount of time.
But scientists are worried that one way or another, the ocean will take back Fairborn.
The natural evolution of a coastline is very, very slow. But if we're trying to hold the line against something that's trying to fight against that, essentially, when you do get a little weakness or you perhaps get a really significant storm event, it causes changes very, very quickly and perhaps very, very catastrophically.
Real estate values have plummeted and local residents say they're not sure what to do in the meantime.
We feel uncomfortable being called the first climate refugee village. What we want is answers now. We want to know if the seawall breaches before 2045, we want to know what's going to happen to us.
Answers are hard to come by, but political leaders say something has to be done or someone's going to die when the water comes.
That's the point where it becomes both economically unviable and an increased risk to life to maintain the defences within Fairborn. So that's why the report recommends decommissioning starts from about 2045.
Scientists say as climate change raises sea levels worldwide, more and more cities and towns near the ocean are going to have to deal with this problem. And while Fairborn residents aren't pleased about becoming climate refugees, there are only a few thousand of the millions of people who are expected to be displaced by rising sea levels over the next 50 years. Kevin Enox, VOA News.
You're watching VOA Africa 54. We'll be right back.
Could be French,
English,
Portuguese,
Bantu,
Arabic.
It is the beat.
The African beat that counts.
The beat does all the translations.
It cuts across all languages and gives us the understanding that this is the African beat.
It is so distinct
and adhesive.
It binds us together.
African Beat on the Voice of America. For more information, visit our website at www.voanews.com/African Beat.
I am Sheikh Sali, host and senior editor of VOA's international call-in talk show, Straight Talk Africa.
Today we'll examine the tobacco industry.
We pretty much touch on anything that you can think of. Politics, health issues, human rights issues, you name it, we talk about it. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent. A very, very rare and unique opportunity to interact with their leaders.
It's time to head to Cairo for the Africa Cup of Nations, where Africa 54 sports guru Sunday Shomari is standing by live. Good evening, Sunday. Last night, Senegal and Nigeria punched their tickets to the semi-finals. Recap that mood for us, Sunday.
Good evening, Esther. For sure, last night was, as I told you before, the calm came back to the city and storm is over. The light is here, and again, Nigeria brought great stuff to this nation yesterday, Esther, after winning against South Africa, because all these Egyptian fans last night were very, very happy just to see Nigeria winning against South Africa. It was like light at the end of the tunnel, and after this big storm, it was like city is back to life. People were very happy. It was just an unbelievable situation because so many Egyptians came to the stadium to watch the game, but only because they bought the tickets ahead of time, thinking that South African game is the winner, so that they will be there anyway. But it wasn't. So they had a chance of getting some sort of a revenge to their foe, Bafana Bafana. And Bafana Bafana is out. We say Masalam in Egypt, no longer here, Esther. But it was a great night to watch, and you could see the fans of Nigeria excited because since 2013, Nigeria has never been to this position. That was the last time they became a champion. So last night was another opportunity for Nigeria to be in the next semi-finals and a big opportunity for the country. Esther, I spoke to so many Nigerians last night. There were so many dances to see what was going on. Let's see some of those dances and the people from Nigeria I spoke to last night, Esther.
Oh, Sunday, I don't think I have those, but okay, all right. All right, Sunday, I hope you can still hear me. I'm trying to get to hear those bites. But anyway, today, Algeria is facing Ivory Coast. And later on, Cinderella, as you love to call them, Madagascar, will be facing Tunisia. What should we expect?
Esther, it's going to be a great tussle tonight. As you see, this game is almost heading to halftime. As you see behind me, people are watching this game. Algeria is leading right now. But Esther, history is not on Algeria's side when they play Ivory Coast. They have played almost 7 times. 3 times Ivory Coast won. Twice Algeria won. And again, twice they had a draw. But guess what, Esther? As I say, things do happen. And right now, if this stays this way, Algeria will be on their way to the semifinals to face the Super Eagles of Nigeria, who are now very happy, enjoying a goosey soup, ready for the semifinal. So this is a game to watch, and people are enjoying this game. But Esther, as you mentioned, Cinderella team is on its way. It's going to play later tonight with Tunisia. If they do it, all they say, Esther, is they keep dreaming. dreaming and dreaming, because dreams usually sometimes come true. And if they do, Cinderella team will be on the way to the semi-final, and history will be written again in these books of AFCON, already written. They seem to be where they are right now, with their president also, Esther, in the country.
Wow.
Such a good thing.
Sunday, get some soup as well, and get something from Madagascar. We'll chat with you again on tomorrow. Sunday, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. Africa 54 sports guru Sunday Shomari reporting live for us from Cairo. Now, the U.S. women's national soccer team celebrated their second straight World Cup championship in New York City Wednesday, riding as the guests of honor in a ticker-tape parade that drew throngs of fans. VOA's Tina Trin reports.
The heat and humidity were no match for the throngs of fans that showed up in downtown Manhattan to celebrate the U.S. women's soccer team and their second straight victory at the World Cup.
We just have supported them since we were 9, 10 years old and have grown up watching this team, and we just really wanted to come out here and celebrate with them.
In a ticker-tape parade heading up Broadway to City Hall, fans lined up to catch a glimpse of their favorite players.
Alex Morgan's like my inspiration. So is Tobin, so is Carly, so is everyone else in the team. They truly inspired me to keep playing soccer.
I'm still shaking. It was just surreal to see them up close.
This group of friends woke up at 2:30 in the morning to travel from Washington, D.C.
Since they're not coming to the White House, we have to come to them, I guess.
It was a reference to team captain Megan Rapinoe, an outspoken critic of President Trump, who has refused an invitation to the White House. It was also a reminder that the bigger issue of women's equality is still at stake.
Megan Rapinoe really represents equality to me and the power of women and what they're trying to accomplish in this country. And I really feel strongly that they should be paid equally.
Rapinoe and her teammates have sued the United States Soccer Federation, accusing it of gender discrimination and calling for equal pay, a move which many fans support.
They're doing the same work, they're doing the same hustle, they're out there in the media, and they're inspiring people.
I think that their pay should be better. I don't think it's equal. I don't think it's right.
A father of 2 girls, David Gibbs said the team's efforts build on a growing movement to get women's paychecks on par with men's.
It's something that they do in the workplace, and we're working on that in the workplace, and why not in the sports arena as well? I mean, we've had Title IX for college, so let's extend that line.
Having already shattered records and expectations, this U.S. women's soccer team is giving the next generation of females a new set of goals to shoot for. Tina Trin, VOA News, New York.
Here in the U.S., the Democratic presidential field continues to shift as one candidate drops out and another joins an already crowded group hoping to oust U.S. President Donald Trump from office next year. Former Vice President Joe Biden remains the leading contender, but finds himself fending off increasingly strong challenges from 2 senators, Kamala Harris and California Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts. VOA's Jim Malone has more on the Democratic race from Washington.
Billionaire liberal activist Tom Steyer made his candidacy official in a campaign video.
If you think that there's something absolutely critical, try as hard as you can and let the chips fall where they may, and that's exactly what I'm doing. My name's Tom Steyer. I'm running for president.
Steyer has long advocated impeaching President Donald Trump, an issue that continues to divide congressional Democrats. Even as Steyer entered the race, California Congressman Eric Swalwell became the first Democrat to formally drop out of the crowded presidential field.
Look, it's a talented field, and that was one of the challenges, I think, for us was had a lot of heavyweights in that field, and it's going to take more twists and turns. I look forward now to being a citizen watching the debates.
Swalwell took part in the first Democratic debate on NBC and took a shot at frontrunner Joe Biden.
Joe Biden was right when he said it was time to pass the torch to a new generation of Americans 32 years ago. He's still right today.
Vice President, would you like to sing a torch song?
I would. I'm still holding on to that torch.
Biden remains the Democratic frontrunner despite a rocky performance in the first debate. The former vice president is now fending off strong challenges from California Senator Kamala Harris and Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren, both of whom got a boost in the polls from their debate performances. Swalwell's departure from the race is a sign that the long winnowing process of the Democratic field has begun, says analyst Jim Kessler.
I think we're really at the point where there's 8 to 10 who have some shot. I mean, one of the things that these debates did is you looked at some of the also-rans and you thought, they're also-rans and they're going to be forever also-rans, so maybe it's just time for you to go.
Democrats do not begin the voting process to choose their 2020 nominee until the Iowa caucuses in February. That leaves plenty of time for the various contenders to go after one another and sow division within the party, says Larry Sabato.
Will they be willing to rally around the one candidate out of the 20-plus candidates who will actually get the nomination when their candidate loses? And it's a great test for a party in any year, and you simply don't know the answer this early.
The Democrats hold their next debate in Detroit at the end of this month. Jim Malone, VOA News, Washington. After successful launches in Ghana and Nigeria, ride-hailing giant Uber is looking to expand in West Africa to Dakar, Senegal. But in a city full of taxis and drivers without smartphones, the Silicon Valley company will have to overcome a lot of challenges to make a profit. VOA's Isha Sarai has more.
Dakar, like most African capitals, is full of taxis. In most parts of the city, day or night, it's relatively easy to catch a cab. But ride-hailing application Uber still sees a potential market in Senegal, and some residents agree.
It might work here, but it will require lots of investment because we don't have the same organization as in US. Like when you are coming to my house, I will not be able to tell you exactly where my house is located on the map. So you will have to, I will have to tell you a building or somewhere, a school, somewhere I can pick you from.
A lack of addresses means directions in Senegal's capital are based on landmarks. A bigger challenge, few drivers have the smartphones needed for the ride-hailing apps, and most have never heard of Uber or know how it works.
If they hire drivers with experience here, they could be successful. Like if they hire us, that's a possibility. But it depends on what they will offer.
Nonetheless, some riders think Uber could still work in Dakar.
There are already other companies here doing similar things. I think if this company came in, it would create competition and add something new to the landscape of transportation in Dakar. I think it could work really well.
Despite the challenges, the Silicon Valley company seems optimistic about new markets in Senegal and West Africa. An Uber spokesperson tells VOA they believe a collaborative approach in new cities benefits both the company and the city. Isha Sarai, VOA News, Dakar.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, have a good evening.